When you think about history, are there lots of old guys wearing wigs and stockings? When you think about history, is Napoleon really short? And folks have wooden teeth. Do you know that history can be the most incredible, amazing stories for you and me? Sit back and listen to a story right now. It's honest, it's fun, and it's sure to.
Hi, young historians. Welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. Are you as excited about this episode as I am? I sure hope so. We're about to dive into another story-filled adventure and learn something new. And remember, by learning more about the past, you can make a positive impact on the future. So pack your bags and let's go.
For many people, when they hear the word Hindenburg, they think of fiery disaster. The Hindenburg was a huge flying ship that burst into flames while landing in 1937, killing 36 people and injuring many more. The disaster was so big, people sometimes call it the Titanic of the skies. So why did this terrible thing happen? How did the Hindenburg go down? Well, let's find out. In the 1930s, the idea that an ordinary person could travel long distances by air was still really new. If you needed to get across an ocean, say from Europe to the United States, most people would book a ticket on a boat, usually a big steamship ocean liner. But getting across an ocean by steamship took a long time. Almost a week to get from Europe to the US. Passengers were hungry for new, faster ways to travel. Enter the airship. Airships were meant to be what they sounded like big sailing ships, but flying through the air. One particularly popular kind of airship was a German invention called the Zeppelin. From the outside, a Zeppelin looks like a huge sideways balloon, and I do mean huge. Zeppelins were sometimes about the size of the Titanic. Inside that big sideways balloon, Zeppelins had a stiff metal frame. The bottom of the metal frame had rooms built into it to hold passengers and crew, spaces like sleeping cabins, dining rooms, and a control center. The rest of the metal frame had big sacks attached to it. Those sacks were inflated with gases, which made the whole enormous Zeppelin float in the air. On many Zeppelins, those sacks were filled with helium, the same thing that makes birthday balloons float. But the Zeppelin we care most about today, the Hindenburg, was a little different. It did not contain helium. It contained another gas called hydrogen. Like helium, hydrogen helps lift airships into the sky. It's also a bit lighter than helium and much cheaper, which sounds good. But hydrogen has one big problem. It is very flammable. That means if you light a match near a bunch of hydrogen, the whole thing goes kablooey. If that sounds pretty dangerous, well, that's because it is. But when the Hindenburg first began flying in 1936, people weren't really focusing on that. Most people were thinking about what airships like these could do. A Zeppelin like the Hindenburg could cross an ocean so fast it only took a couple of days, nearly half the time it took a steamship. By the time the Hindenburg set out on its final ill-fated flight in 1937, it had already seen a lot of action. It had flown across the Atlantic Ocean 10 times. It floated over the Olympic Stadium in Berlin as part of the 1936 Olympic opening ceremonies. The Hindenburg was also a Nazi airship, as it was known for dropping Nazi leaflets over many German cities. You may already know about the Nazi Party. It was a political group that rose to power in Germany in the late 1930s. The Nazi Party was led by a man named Adolf Hitler, and it had unfair rules that hurt different groups of people, especially Jewish people. Not too long after the Hindenburg Disaster, the Nazis would end up at war with the US and many other countries during World War II. The Hindenburg was built before the war. And though the Zeppelin wasn't designed specifically for political or military purposes, it was used several times for missions that supported Nazi causes. The airship even had big swastikas, a Nazi symbol, painted on the tail fins. However, before you start thinking that the Hindenburg was carrying Nazi soldiers when it blew up in a fiery blaze, let's take a closer look at what the ship was doing when it crashed and who was on it. The Hindenburg's last disastrous journey began in Frankfurt, Germany. The plan was to fly a total of 97 people across the Atlantic Ocean, landing in Lakehurst, New Jersey in the U.S. On the evening of May 3, 1937, 36 passengers and 61 crew members boarded the Hindenburg. Most of the passengers were wealthy. This was a very expensive ticket. But otherwise, there was a mix of different kinds of people traveling for different reasons. One passenger, a German journalist named Gertrude Adelt, remembered it like this. There was the old merchant from Hamburg who was finally taking his wife on a trip to America. There was the good, motherly businesswoman from Hamburg anxiously counting the hours that separated her from her ailing daughter in Boston. The Swedish journalist was the rosy face on his way to Washington for an interview. The young artist with the gentle, deliberate way of walking was going home to his wife and children on Long Island after a successful European tour. A family from Mexico was enjoying a wonderful conclusion to a visit with their old homeland. These different passengers all had a lot to explore aboard the airship. The Hindenburg was built to be a luxurious experience. Though the sleeping cabins were small, the public spaces were large and elegant. There was a dining hall where you could get to know your fellow travelers over smooth white tablecloths topped with flowers, eat food prepared by chefs from some of the best restaurants in Europe, or you could just gaze out the large windows at the view from the sky. There was a lounge with a painted map of the world on the wall and a special aluminum piano. There were washrooms, a writing room, and even a special pressurized room on the lower deck where people could go to smoke. The first few days of the journey were slow going. The weather was bad. With effort from the crew, the Hindenburg crawled out over the Rhine River, out of Germany, past the English Channel, and out across the Atlantic Ocean. For those first few days, all anyone could see out the windows was billowing gray clouds. But then, the sky cleared. Passengers got to peek at giant icebergs floating in the sea off the coast of Newfoundland. By the morning of May 6, the airship was passing over the city of Boston in the United States. But then it got delayed again. This time, there were thunderstorms near its planned landing spot.
Hi friends, are you enjoying today's episode? I'd like to take a quick break from the story to tell you about another great place to learn about the past. Honest History creates magazines and books for kids that are filled with fun stories and activities that bring history to life. From pirates to spies to great inventions and so much more, you'll learn about interesting people, places, and events from around the world that made history. Created for kids ages 6 through 12, you can sign up and receive new adventures delivered straight to your doorstep every quarter. Just visit honesthistory.co. That's honesthistory.co to sign up today. Oh, and here's a special offer for our podcast listeners. Use code ANYTIMENOW for 10% off. Again, that special code is ANYTIMENOW. Okay, let's get back to the story.
To kill time waiting for the storms to clear, the captain of the Hindenburg decided to fly over the island of Manhattan in New York City. That was exciting, not just for the people on board who got an incredible view of the city skyline, but also for the people on the ground in Manhattan. Remember, at the time, it seemed like Zeppelins were going to be the next big thing in air travel. The Empire State Building had just become the tallest building in New York City because of a huge, tall needle, or spire, on the top. What was the purpose of that spire? Well, the hope was one day it could be used as a mooring mast, a place where airships could land. So the sight of the Hindenburg flying over Manhattan on its first journey of the season made a giant splash.
Thousands of persons craned their necks in Times Square yesterday afternoon as the Hindenburg, a familiar sight to this area, soared above the tall buildings in a brilliant sun. Chauffeurs stopped their automobiles and left the steering wheel and gazed skyward as the ship, its motors roaring and swastikas gleaming, passed over the city.
As the ship finally made its way to Lakehurst, New Jersey, a crowd gathered to watch the ship land at its destination. Amongst the crowd was a radio reporter named Herbert Morrison. He and his sound engineer, Charlie Nelson, came to Lakehurst all the way from Chicago. Their plan was to record a radio report about the triumphant landing of the Hindenburg in the U.S. As the Hindenburg approached the mooring mast in Lakehurst and began to land, Charlie started recording. And Herbert started describing what he saw into the microphone. This means he was recording when the Hindenburg went up in flames. Herbert's account of the disaster, made in real time, has become famous. The sound clip that we are going to play is pretty intense. If you would rather not listen to it, you can skip ahead 40 seconds.
It's starting to rain again. The rain had slacked up a little bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from... It bursts into flames. Get it started. It's fighting, and it's crashing. It's crashing terrible. Oh, my. Get out of the way, please. It's burning, bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between it. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 400 or 500 feet into the sky, and it's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. All the humanity and all the fun.
To this day, no one knows for sure what caused that spark to blow up the Hindenburg. It could have been lightning. It could have been static electricity. Some people even think that the fire was set on purpose, though that idea has been largely disproven now. But no matter what caused it, what everyone knows is this. Once the Hindenburg caught fire, it only took about 34 seconds for the entire thing to be consumed in flames and crash to the ground. 34 seconds to set fire to the explosive hydrogen, all the cloth on the outside of the ship, and all the diesel fuel inside the engine. 34 seconds to ignite the elegant dining room and the lounge with its painted map of the world and aluminum piano, the smoking room, and the crew deck. 34 seconds for anyone on board to escape. As Herbert Morrison watched the crash in horror from the ground, it seemed impossible that anyone on board the Hindenburg could have survived the fiery blast. But incredibly, many people did survive. Of the 97 people who first boarded the Hindenburg, 62 of them survived. Most made it out by leaping from the windows of the dining room, which were 15 feet or more off the ground. Some might not even have survived once they landed, if not for helpers on the ground who rushed towards the crash to help pull people out of the wreckage to safety. The survivors were taken to local hospitals to care for their injuries. Herbert and Charlie, still badly shaken up by what they had seen and heard, took the recordings back to Chicago, where they helped break the news of the terrible crash to the world. After the Hindenburg disaster, nobody wanted to travel by Zeppelin anymore. What had been the next big thing of the future was suddenly and tragically history. The world moved on. Instead of airships, jet planes came to be the new, faster way passengers traveled the world. And yet, some people still wonder what could have been. If the Hindenburg hadn't gone up in flames, would we still be flying in airships to this day? And some people think that the age of the airship is still ahead of us. These days, more and more people are becoming concerned about the impact of jet planes on the environment. Some people have started to wonder if airships might offer a more environmentally friendly alternative. It's been nearly 100 years since the Hindenburg was built, and technology has progressed a lot since then. If we could make new airships safer than the old ones, could they be a clean, fast way to transport cargo or even people? Maybe someday we'll look up in the sky and see Zeppelins in the air once again. But hopefully, this time, not on fire.
Welcome back! What did you think of today's adventure? We hope you learned something new. Be sure to share the story with your friends and family, and use what you've learned today to go out there and make a positive impact on history yourself. That's all for now, but if you want to learn more about important and amazing stories from the past, be sure to subscribe to Honest History Magazine, where you'll discover stories from around the world. Thanks for listening. This episode was narrated by Randall Lawrence and written by Rose Connolly. Production was led by Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about Honest History, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media.